good night to all our viewers. I'm assuming I'm live now. Just saying good night from the Caribbean. I'm Carver Bacchus. I'm based in Trinidad and Tobago. I'm going to be the moderator of this discussion this evening. I'm also the director of the Green Screen Environmental Film Festival, which I suppose is why they asked me to moderate this evening's discussion with our eminent panel of filmmakers, because all the films you would have seen tonight would have been focused on environmental issues. As we all are aware, you know, the Caribbean is not only struggling with all the issues that the rest of the world is struggling with in the context of the pandemic, but, you know, as very small countries, very small islands, we're also grappling with the realities of climate change and how climate change is going to impact our economies and the safety of our people and our health going into the future. And a lot of the films that you would have seen tonight sort of touch on some of those issues of resilience and some of those issues of preparation. So, you know, in that context, I'd like to start the ball rolling without further ado to really get this discussion going. So I'd like to invite the first filmmaker, Akley Olton, to give us a little bit of background on his film. You know, Akley, tell us a little bit about why you made your film, a little bit of background on what it's all about, and also just so people get a sense of a little bit more about, you know, who you are as a filmmaker. I'd like you to share a little bit about, you know, how you feel about where you are in the world geographically, how that sort of impacts the filmmaker that you are, how it impacts the type of stories that you tell. You have to unmute,
yeah. I'll make a try. First, good night and thank you for having me. Just want to make a little personal big up to Vonnie Roudette, who's, you know, she kind of kickstarted my journey in art and creativity and film and everything. So I just, you know, always want to point that out. And también Claudia, que bueno verte. Claudia and I went to the EICTV in Cuba together. We studied cinema for some time. So my film helped with climate change. It was really an impulse to the whole movement that was happening like a year ago, 2019, with Greta. You know, when the European children started to make a big kind of advocacy for climate change and all of that. And I felt like it was great. It was good to see it in the media. Yes, congratulations. But, you know, I live on an island that is really close to the environment. Well, we live really close to nature. So when something happens, it affects us in a very big way. Like in the case of St. Vincent, like right now, we're not just living with COVID, but we're living with a volcano that might explode at any moment. So the reality of climate change is like very real for us. So I just wanted to like put some media out there in, you know, in the social media, in the context that give a person from my world, a young person, a young Black female, that gives, you know, like her opinion and puts it out there too, just like Greta had her voice, because that kind of movement didn't happen on the islands where it should happen. So, so that was the motive behind that and the reason, really. And I guess in a general sense, I would say my films are about, they're kind of like activism films, or they're about things that I see in my society that I think light should be shed on or should be confronted, or, you know, like that. That's why I make films. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I think it certainly does. Thank you very much for that contribution, Akley. I certainly can say that I feel, you know, similarly. The urgency to get some of these stories out, you know, is really the motivation factor for me, for the films that I create, and certainly for the festival. I'm confident that the rest of the panel also feels that way. So in no particular order, maybe Arnaldo, I know that the piece that you guys, North 11, would have created also spoke to, you know, the volcano and preparedness. And I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about, how that project came together. And perhaps a little bit about North 11 as well, because you're representing a collective of designers and creatives. So maybe just give us a sense of who North 11 really are.
Great. So greetings, everyone. I'm Arnaldo James, and I am from North 11. The 1979 La Soufrière Eruption animation, which I think is about a 4-minute piece, came to us via the UWI Seismic Research Center. Monique Johnson, I think, is the representative, and she's in this call. And us at North 11, we have always been interested in producing animations and doing work that touches the wider Caribbean. And so North 11 is led by Johan Medford, and so he and myself lead creative direction typically. And on this project, I think 6 animators worked on it. Tavona McDavid, Joel Cabrice, Alim Baksh, Matthew Mungal, Samantha Farmer, and Sean Goodbridge Wilson. And
that sounds like everybody.
Yeah. I think that's everyone. It may have been, I'm trying to remember if anyone else chimed in on it, but no, I think primarily it was that. And it is focused on volcanic safety in the region. It's a poem written by Vincentian. His name, I always remember his go-to name, which is Tajo, which sometimes I pronounce wrong. You can go for it, Monique.
Yeah, Tajo.
Tajo, there we go. And many Vincentians, I think almost every time that name has come up, Vincentian's been like, yeah, I'm a boy. So I've spoken to him a couple of times, and yeah, we pretty much just worked with a piece that he had written and developed the visuals along with the UWI-SRC team to tell that story, which in this instance was his personal account of waking up that morning of the 1979 eruption. Yeah, I think
Got it.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
A little bit of background. Tajo had performed that piece at the project launch for the Volcano Ready project back in I think it was either late 2018. And, we had this community launch in Sandy Bay, and we asked him just to do a little piece for us. And I think Tajo just whipped up this poem in probably like 2 days before. It was very impromptu. And he performed it. I mean, we were so sort of blown away by it, to be honest, that it really, and when his presence and the way that he delivered it as well, it was so impactful. We really, I was like, we have to do something with this piece. So the idea of an animation was sort of being discussed as Seismic, and we were really happy to get the support under the project for this, and to find this group of really talented animators that just basically ran with it. So
it's a beautiful piece. It's. I mean, what I really wanted to ask, and I suppose I can ask now that we've sort of veered left into the project, but it's clearly something that's meant to create some level of behavior change, and I was wondering, or at least behavior change in the context of preparation, and I was wondering if it would be used as a tool like that, and if it had been deployed in the context of a wider communication program for preparedness, or if it was used as simply an education tool.
Yeah, definitely, all of the above. One of the main activities or outcomes under the project, the Volcano Ready project, was to document best practices and the lessons learned. And of course, there are many different directions that we could have taken with that, but I really wanted to use the avenue of film, just to target the audience that we're dealing with now through social media and whatnot. And so two of the films that in this panel would have fallen under that. And so really it would be to do exactly that as you're suggesting, to incite some sort of behavioral change, both in the long term and as we're seeing now, ironically, for an immediate response as well. And really the idea for me was to, as best as possible, document people's experiences and using the art forms as best as possible through storytelling, through poetry. This is how the stories and the experiences have always been passed down through generations, you know. We are lucky, or perhaps not so lucky, to have that living memory of 79 still. So I think that the messaging through these channels, through these persons, these personalities, to me is just really effective. I would hope, and hope that the Vincentian people are receiving it. It's made for the Vincentian people.
Yeah, I think it was definitely very localized as a voice, and I was happy to see that North 11 is one of our oldest collaborators as a festival, and we've actually worked with them on a few different types of animation projects as well. So it's good to see North 11 doing this particular type of work. I think it's very important. Congratulations to the North 11 team as well as the folks over at Seismic, Monique. Now I just want to jump over to Miss Roudette, if that's okay. I want to bring her into the conversation a little bit. I know that Aiko was she the director slash writer or director slash producer of this film? So I don't want to put too much pressure on you to speak from a filmmaker's perspective.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
I don't think that would be fair, but certainly you can tell us a little bit about, you know, where the genesis of the Grassman project came from. I know this is the second part in a two-part documentary series, 2 parts so far anyway. So I was wondering, you know, where did the genesis of this idea come from? It's very specific. It's very powerful as an idea. It speaks to livelihoods, it speaks to rehabilitation, it speaks to social justice, it speaks to environmental conservation. It's cross-cutting so many different things. So so yeah, where did the inspiration?
Thank you so much for the question, and I'd just like to greet and hail up all the film directors in this amazing panel. Thanks to everyone for being here and for the amazing work that they're all doing. I'm really impressed with the films. And the Grassman adventure is an unfolding one, and it's growing organically. So far we do have 2 films, but there is a 3rd one in the making. And the story really started with the project Sustainable Livelihood Training in the prison itself. It started 6 years ago. And I went into the prison just to do a very short workshop in the vetiver craft skills with prisoners. I was asked by the FAO to do that, just a 4-week training. And that sort of was embraced so heartily, especially by the male prisoners, when I saw the sort of creative responses and the impact it was having on them within the context of their incarceration. I sort of just volunteered my time for a year to keep it going and see where it could lead. I just really responded to their enthusiasm and their creativity. But the whole story of the vetiver grass is a fascinating one anyway. I've been working with vetiver for 25 years or so, because it has this application to soil regeneration and land conservation due to its very deep root system. And so as much as I love working with the craft of vetiver, I always connect it, I'll always link it with the most essential use, which I think is impactful in this context of climate change resilience, which is land conservation and soil stabilization. So, and groundwater retention, all those things. So the thing is that the project sort of developed out of the prison into a conservation project as well. So what you're seeing in Grassmen 1 is a focus on that program as it was implemented in the prison and the impact on the rehabilitation of prisoners. The Grassmen 2 now has sort of journeyed beyond the prison walls to the conservation project and the demonstration site farm and the Vetiver nursery, which was established by prisoners as well. They received conservation sustainability education through that project. So the guys involved in that were already trained in that. They're part of the handcraft program inside the prison. This stepped out, and as you see, one of the we worked with one in particular to tell his story through the film, so that you could see the development and the utilization of that information outside, when he comes outside prison and into the community. So the reason I thought the films would be really important is that I have worked with some very early documentaries in the 90s, where I directed a series called on the Heritage Trail for the OAS. And I saw the impact that those community documentaries had on the appreciation of the heritage, the local heritage of Vincentians. And I thought that a film about this project in particular would do two things. It would educate people about the vetiver, the importance of vetiver systems technology, but also enable the prisoners to feel more validated. And one of the problems they face is the attitudes of the public when they come out of prison, and it can be so negative. The stigma is enormous. So the films have helped, and also to promote the products that they're making, you know, which we market under the label of Grow in Time. So the film had all this sort of a clear role and function as it engages with its audience. And of course, as in every art form, the response from the audience or from the user, from the person that connects with that art form, really informs the next stage, you know. So we know that we want to do a Grassmen 3 film. We've got some funding for that. And Akley Olton has been, he assisted us with Grassmen 2, and, you know, we keep working together because he's...
There's a little family growing around the Grassmen, it sounds like.
There's a Grassmen family. I mean, up to today, I was out in the field for about 10 hours with a whole gang of them that have come out of prison. So we continue to work together and promote the use of vetiver and the knowledge about vetiver, you know. And it's amazing to see how I've been working with sustainable and natural farming for many, many years. So to be able to share that with them, a lot of them are farmers, but they're learning new ways and new methods and more sustainable ways of farming through this project. So all in all, you know, it's still growing, and I love that process. I love the process. And you're right, Aiko did a magnificent job with the directing of both those films.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we love
the growth from the first part to the second part. There's a maturity of you know, in the approach to the material. So.
Exactly. And I don't consider myself a filmmaker at all, but I am an artist with a sort of background in creative education as well. So I've encouraged, you know, film as a really important medium in terms of for education, for any level of education. So film and video. So I'm really pleased, and I think the sponsors, the St. Vincent and the Grenadines Environment Fund that sponsored this film, Grassmen 2, are really pleased. You know, it reflects well on their organisation, and they really love the way we handled the content and the message that comes across.
Yep, gotta keep the client happy as well.
Yeah. And I love the collaboration. I have worked on a lot of films and videos and music videos as art direction or wardrobe or costume design. I've worked in theatre doing costume design. And I love the collaborative aspect. I love working with the team and for, you know, just to create this, again, an organic sort of dynamic group and that evolves and grows together. I just love that whole process. For me, that's
Yes.
really fulfilling
Well,
and enriching.
you've had a really positive experience making films, being involved in the process of making films. I can assure you, it's not always that positive, but you know, that's why it's important to keep you know, people that you work with well and that you have a kinship with close, you know, and that's why we see so many film collectives, you know, keep doing what they do, because that chemistry is hard to come by.
Exactly, and on that point, I mean, one of the focuses of the training for the grassmen inside the prison and also outside is to develop this ability to collaborate and interact and listen and communicate as a group. So a lot of the projects that we do with the larger pieces, you know, some huge mats and things, you have to work as a team, you know, and for a lot of them, they've never experienced that before. It's literally the first time. And through the experiencing the function of that group cohesion and collaboration, it is in itself a huge step in the process of rehabilitation, their ability to reintegrate into society and to avoid, you know, the same pattern that brought them into prison in the first place.
Well, I would say that just a last comment from me before we move on to I want to ask Claudia some questions. Yeah, you know, I think that it's definitely a type of project that needs to be maybe not reproduced in exactly the same way, but certainly replicated in some way in other places, because it, you know, it definitely sounds like something that it's very worthwhile and it seems to be working.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you very much.
Really appreciate
Thank
it.
you. Thank you. Claudia. So I have a couple questions for you. They actually asked that I send a few ahead of time to get it translated. They were very simple questions. I don't know if they did that.
Yeah.
They did. Okay. So I suppose what is really, well, first of all, if you can, tell us a little bit about your project. And then in your answer, if you can also tell me a little bit about why you selected the main character in your film. You know, like, you know, there are lots of farmers, there are lots of bushmen, as we call them, in Cuba. You know, why this one? You know, what was so interesting about this particular character? So please tell us a little bit about that.
Well, the film El Monte, it's a film that touches environmental topics, but I think from a poetic approach. And I think, well, this is like my voice. I'm a visual artist and I work in video, and I also make like video installations and films. But I think that I'm interested in sensorial and experimental languages visually, and so I think that when I made this film, which I consider a documentary, I was also exploring these other types of ways of talking about it, like with still photography, which was an analogic, like 35 millimeter with an old film.
Beautiful.
And video, and the film, I think it's showing something that is almost lost, which is the connection between human beings and nature. And what I wanted to do with the film was to well, I'm gonna explain why I made the film. I was a student in Cuba at the International Film School with Akley, and for the ones that were studying documentary film direction, we had like an assignment of making a short film in the mountains in Sierra Maestra, which is in the southeast part of the island. And we had to spend like around a month there and make a documentary about like a character. So it was an assignment of portraying someone. And when I was there, I was so moved by the environment and nature that I wanted to portray nature, but I wasn't allowed to do that. So I found myself walking the mountains until I found Jose Manuel and his granddaughter Malena, and I mean, he's one of the most extraordinary people I've ever met. So that's why I chose him. It was because we fell in love with each other. I actually, when I was doing my research, I was asking people, if you were a tree, which tree would you be? I don't know if I'm if I'm saying it right. And I got many answers. And when I met him, I didn't even ask him. Like, I just knew, I knew he was the right person to, not to say to make a film about, because I didn't want to make a film about him. I wanted to make a film about nature through him and Malena, and the way they interact with seeds and roots and grass and the big trees and the forests. So he's actually not a farmer. He works as a plumber in the small community, and he has many different jobs, but I didn't want to portray that. I was just interested in the way they just walk around and find things and have, and he also shares his knowledge with his younger generation, his granddaughter. So what else can I say? Yeah, I don't know. I think at these times of ecological destruction and crisis, environmental crisis, and like capitalist brutality, what I found with them was like hope, and also a lesson of and also the chance of showing another way of existing and living, completely against the Western parameters and Western views of nature as something that you can exploit, that is there for you to be exploited. So in the film, and I think not in Cuba and not in the mountains, but it was particularly something that that Jose Manuel is showing us. But I think that the natural and the supernatural are kind of like the same, and that is why the film is more about this supernatural and magic qualities of plants, but also the great resemblances that they have with us, with human beings, in psychological sort of in terms of psychological profiles or attitudes in life. We are basically the same thing.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. That's an important point. And it's fascinating that this gentleman, who was basically the focus of your film, was not a professional, man who made his living off of the land. I totally got that impression because of his sort of commitment to transmitting what he understood to his granddaughter. And that idea is somewhat revolutionary, and it's interesting that it would have been shot in the Sierra Maestra. I believe, if I know my history, that's where Fidel and they were based in the early days of the revolution, and would make their sorties out to fight and do what they had to do in order to free Cuba. So very interesting that that's the legacy left in the Sierra Maestra. Right, so we have one filmmaker left. My comrade, Michael Lees. Michael, how you doing, brother?
Doing good. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. Good to see you again.
Yeah, likewise.
Back on the Zoom.
It doesn't stop.
Doesn't stop, man. Zoom is without Zoom, I don't know what we would do. Right. So, I mean, I suppose the same questions would apply to you, Michael. Really, just tell us a little bit about your film. Why you made it. And maybe you can sort of give us a little background on yourself as a filmmaker and how you position yourself and where your inspiration comes from in terms of your place in the world and this region.
Cool. Well, as you might be starting to see a trend, Vonnie is a mastermind behind a lot of things and a lot of people going on. So this was actually a project I did for her NGO, Hand to Earth, and the FAO. And it was basically encouraging people in Dominica to plant vetiver grass for soil conservation, keeping the moisture in the soil, preventing land erosion, and then also the craft element as well. And it really was, you can't get more grassroots than a grassroots vetiver project. I think one of the most interesting things I think about this, and actually answers a question that someone asked about the importance of maintaining our local histories in the context of preserving potential scientific, environmental, and medical knowledge. I think there's a lot of people in Dominica, especially probably throughout the region, who know or knew a lot about both plants like vetiver, as well as medicinal plants, herbal remedies, all of this kind of stuff. And we're getting to the point where the newer generations, that knowledge isn't always being passed on for certain reasons. Elders have liked to keep certain of these things secret. And then at the same time, you have less interest in a lot of young people about these things. But I was listening to a Russell Brand podcast the other day, and he was talking about fungi being nature's hidden solution, and about how fungi both work with plants on their leaves, but also especially in the roots, and connect all these different plants together and have this whole network going on. And how Western science is just, the interviewer didn't say discovering, but remembering, because there are so many traditions of knowledge and indigenous knowledge that knew all of these things. And then as we sort of moved away from nature, then we had to go back kind of with our microscope and with our experiments to find out a truth that we already knew once upon a time. So I think it's really important for us to realize that we have a lot of the answers. We've had them for a very long time. And especially in the face of things like hurricanes or COVID, being able to have solutions like vetiver grass, which are low cost and low impact, and you can locally source. I think we're seeing the value in having things such as that. And again, just importance of maintaining that knowledge.
Yeah. Well, just a follow-up question then, Michael, and maybe Vonnie can jump in as well if she likes. Actually, anybody on the panel can jump in if they have a perspective on this. But we're realizing more and more that there's let's call it technology, understandings, indigenous information related to conservation, related to a whole host of things that would actually, in this time, make our lives a little bit better or make our lives a little bit easier, you know. But a lot of those things, you know, were forgotten and are being rediscovered, you know, in corner over here and a corner over there. You know, my question is, what can we do as documenters, documentarians, to ensure that that does not happen again? You know, that we can sort of mainstream a lot of these things in the context of what we do. You know, I don't want to answer the question for you, you know, so I don't want to talk too much, but what can we do?
Well, there's a lot of things that come to mind. I mean, I already am now thinking up different projects of ways to make this information both accessible but also entertaining. But I also think that while we do that as filmmakers and documentarians, at the same time we do that, we need to lay the groundwork for our own people to be able to capitalize off of these things. Because so often you see, for instance, like marijuana has been used, or cannabis has been used for a very long time in the Caribbean. But all of a sudden, who's about to profit off it? It's going to be American corporations. So if we do put this information out about all our plants and all of this stuff, which I think is important, we also need to position ourselves for our own people to benefit from sharing that knowledge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's an incredibly important point. Yeah, I mean, we have to ensure that what is ours remains ours. And, you know, I think the fact that the development of a lot of these sectors and a lot of these spaces, what it doesn't lack ideas, it doesn't lack, you know, people wanting to do something, people having a desire to make a change and mix things up. What it often lacks is a plan, you know, and what we tend to lack is that vision. I would say, okay, well, yeah, we're not quite doing what we need to be doing now, but we will in 10 years, and this is how we're going to get there. It seems to me like, you know, our regional leadership tends to be very, let's say, focused on the now. I won't say I won't say too much more than that, but they're definitely focused on now, you know, and what's happening now, you know. And of course, everything's happening now because now is what you have. But the reality is that there must be a bit of a plan, and there must be some inclusion, and there must be a plan to. The plan must be to use these spaces to, you know, pull people out of poverty, to make people safer, you know, to insulate our region, you know, from shocks, not only environmental but economic, you know. So yeah, so I mean, a plan is really what we should be after. But I could talk all night about that.
Hi.
Hi, Arnaldo.
I'd just like to piggyback off of what you and Michael have said. And I think part of it is continuing to integrate these aspects of our own heritage and practice that we carry in every bit of work that we make. Effectively, like just being our own advocates continuously. I think in a consideration of what sustainability is, it's, I think, some forces are attempting to compartmentalize it as a new product, whereas again, it's just the way that we live, and so every time we speak, every time we make a film, every time we post a picture on the gram, all of those sort of things can incorporate aspects of what we value, which is the environment, health, safety. And I think in addition to that, it's also within our own communities amplifying, not necessarily the loudest, but again, the people with the knowledge and the values and the authenticity in everything that we do. So my 2 cents for this part.
No, I completely agree. I completely agree. And just to add a little bit more to that, I think that if we had, because obviously we have individuals who understand these issues, individuals in pockets of our societies who understand these issues and who might speak about these things at the dinner table. They might speak about these things, with their friends and their family. But the institutions, the big institutions, the banks and the whatever, they generally don't understand, how, climate change, for example, is they're not fully onboarding the reality of some of these environmental challenges, is what I'm saying, even though individuals within these organizations do understand it, Interestingly, as I mentioned, banks, the Fed, which is the, basically the central bank of the States, they are starting a study to look at how climate change is going to impact what they're trying to do, what their objectives are. Okay. Now, I think that is an important exclamation point, for all of us in the region, to really pay attention. If the Fed is looking at, okay, well, we're the states and we have all this infrastructure and we have all of these things that we're trying to do, and we understand now that climate change is real and it's going to affect us. Let's figure out what we're going to do to hedge our bets. All right, that's what they're doing. Now, small as we are, we're in the Caribbean, we're going to be affected in a much more profound way, than the states would be, certainly in the first instance. What we need to do is have our institutions really paying attention to this issue and trying to internalize their operations in response. I know all you guys, would completely appreciate and understand that, and that's why, you do what you do. But the question mark for me is always, and this is I suppose the point that I'm getting to now, the question I'm going to ask you guys, and anybody who wants to answer it will answer it. How do you think, right? What mechanisms do you think we need to be using to get the average person to understand what the issues are? And when they take action, what, in your opinion, does that action look like?
So I think to get the average person to understand some of these things, I guess we have to make it simple and not make it so intellectual discussion in these spaces that the regular people don't. I mean, this festival is great because it's free and it's open. It's bringing the knowledge into St. Vincent and out into the Caribbean in a very open way. And also even the name of the festival, Hairouna points to the indigenous name of the island, and then the stories that come out of that. So I see this as a great model. I also see what Vonnie is doing as a great model, because it makes people at different stratas of the society interact with each other, and then it uses the environment and kind of combines it with the economy. So you see interesting things there. And then that takes me to the point that I think is strongest, which is in Michael's film, right? The one about him surviving the hurricane in the bush, right? That was your film, right, Michael? Right. So we see that, yes, we live closer to nature. And we also see that with some of the knowledge that we have, right, we have our own way of riding out the storm, right? Because Michael survived until the next day, right? So in a kind of a way, we have our way of riding out the storm. But what we have done is turn our backs to our way. So you need like aggressive education, but not, it shouldn't feel aggressive, you know? The thing about Vonnie's project is that, you know, like the mats, the bags, you know, and all of these things that are created with the plants, with the indigenous technology, right? These things were created essentially because somebody wanted a bowl to eat out of, and there wasn't a system set up to import bowls into the island, right? So that forced people to be creative. It's also forced people to depend on what is close by, you know, like what is around them. Because I mean, you're not going to look and wait for a ship to go to Europe to bring back a bowl for you to get it to eat food from you. You look around and see, what can I make a bowl with? What can I make a spoon with? And this is what we have given up and replaced it with the Syrian stores and the Visa card and the, you know, with the supermarket. So it's really how to confront that as a region, right? And as societies, is how to confront that. Because I mean, the business of it, and I'm sure Vonnie could tell you, like in terms of like mass production without the market, you might produce so much because you have this wealth of resource and technology, but then you don't have the interest nor the market to buy the products you want to produce. So then what do you do with that? You know, what do you do is like beating a dead horse. Like, what do you do with that? You try to help, you try to make a difference, but the space is so colonized still that it's unable to confront what's going on, you know? So, it's just how to confront that schizophrenia there. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a challenge. So guys, it looks like we have about 19 minutes or so before the hour. So what I'd like to do, if it's okay with you guys, is to start looking at questions from the audience, right? And so let's see. The first question is from Himon Bergen. This question is for everyone. I assume anyone. Could you discuss the importance? Oh, that's a question that Michael already sort of answered. Could you discuss the importance of maintaining our local histories in the context of preserving potential scientific, environmental, medical knowledge? So let's go to the next question. We kind of touched on that one already. There's a comment for the Vincentian filmmakers. Shikania Small would like to see a film made to support reviving the recently discovered Kalinago village in Argyle. They suggest crafting with vetiver and other local grasses can also be included. Okay. Sounds like a solid suggestion. There's a question specifically for Claudia from Himon Bergen. He asks, can you give us a glimpse of what the Cuban film scene is like? Wants to know what the Cuban film scene is like.
I think I'm probably not the best person to speak about it, but if I had, you know, I'm gonna try to give a glimpse. And I'd say that in Cuba everything it's quite difficult and complicated because you have to divide between what's official and what's unofficial. So I think that there is a Cuban filmmaking scene of independent filmmakers that are not even legal or are not even like supported by any platform or anything, and then the official filmmaking. Of course, there's a country with like low budget, so it's not like they have a massive film industry, but they do have a history in filmmaking and cinema schools and a tradition, but yeah, it's not like super big. But I think it's more, you can make this division in ideologies or ways of making, or yeah, who you work with. So if it's something for the government or if it's something independent, that's
a big difference. That is a big difference, I would imagine. Yes. Okay. Oh, by the way, Claudia, I would personally apologize to you for sending questions ahead to be translated. Your English is better than mine.
No.
Confused as to why that was.
No.
I'm confused as to why that was necessary. Very confusing. So, okay. Question for everyone. The question is, where do you all see your filmmaking voice in the next few years? And what are you all doing to keep yourselves motivated during these times and keeping your film ideas alive? Interesting question. Anybody can take that.
Akley, you're muted.
Oh, I was just saying that's a personal question right there, you know. Like, I don't know.
Mm.
I would say, as a filmmaker from the Caribbean, you know, Claudia was describing the Cuban system, and Cuban cinema, it's old, you know, like it's at least 50 or 60 years old, or maybe older than that. So they've had time to like invent themselves and build themselves up. But you find that on this side of the Caribbean now, you know, like we have been consumers of American cinema and European cinema for the past Lord knows how many years. And it's how we interact with cinema, you know, like as a thing that's 100 years old. It's how that's how our story started. And to be from the island and to be a part of that, it's not straightforward. There's no textbook strategy. There's nothing to tell you how to do it. And there are not any there are few mentors in our societies to like help you figure out where to go and how to do it, and few people to look to so you could figure out what you know what's my next step. So it's kind of like a big freestyle. And if you could discover what you want to say, and if you could connect with your themes and build some business around it, maybe you can make it sustainable. But I feel maybe that's where I am right now, looking for sustainability, because you know, like I have the skill and the confidence and all of that. So it's just figuring out the next step, which is the business and sustainability. And then you know, like choosing to be a filmmaker in the Caribbean in my opinion, is a revolutionary act. When what's his name, Eduardo Moybridge, was developing his 24 frames per second experiment over there in England, our people had recently been emancipated. So what does that mean for people like us, you know, to claim to want to tell stories about ourselves? What does that mean? The technology wasn't created for us. It was created out of the excess of our exploitation. So I understand where I stand within that framework in terms of, you know, getting my films to Cannes or all of that. So basically, I'm just trying to like use what I know to put the ideas that my society is lacking, because you know nobody puts it in the media, and I think, you know, if you can, you should. So
Yeah.
that's it. And how far I get, you know.
Well, let me ask a bit of a follow up there to you, Akley, as well as to the rest of the panel. As Caribbean filmmakers, you know, we or as filmmakers from the Caribbean, Latin America, from the developing space, let's say, right? But in particular, Caribbean filmmakers, our voice very often is a specific voice. You know, very often is a specific voice, you know, and what ends up happening quite often is we tell stories for ourselves, right? We tell stories that we would understand and we would appreciate. But the reality is that the access to larger markets only comes when the stories you tell are more universal. You know, it will come when the stories you tell has more points to connect to it than try to figure out what it's all about from a cultural standpoint. So my question is, does, you know, first of all, do you think that is true? Right? You don't have to agree with me. You don't have to assume that is true at all. Right? Do you think that is true? And then if you think it's true, like how do you think filmmakers from small places can create content for the world? Like what do we need to figure out, overcome, do work on whatever to get our stories, not necessarily to Cannes, because that's a particular idea, but you know, to somewhere where people will want to see it. You know, that people outside of the 6 million people in this region would say, yeah, we are interested in this content. We want to see this film.
I'd like to chime in on that one.
Please.
Yes, so it's nuanced. So my background comes from photography and graphic design. I wanted to make film and found my own, unique way to get into that. I've collaborated with Rhonda Chansu and now work with her at Birds Eye View Productions to make film, and I use that as a way to, because she's a documentary film director, and so I use that as one entryway. I got involved with North 11, who have been known primarily, I think, in a large scale as like the projectors of the film festivals around Trinidad and Tobago. Like someone's doing a festival, we've done it. But that team
and
is a team of
Hairouna as well.
animators. Pardon?
And Hairouna as well. I believe they were in
the first Hairouna Film Festival. Our team went across and we projected that. And as I said, in addition to that, it's a team of animators. They all were trained at the University of Trinidad and Tobago in that animation program. And so that gave me an opportunity to get involved in, fortunately, directing and leading these motion picture works, right? I say all of that to tie into figuring out, again, how do I get this work to be seen? I think where you mentioned, again, like the 6 or 8 million persons, at least I think just like in the English-speaking Caribbean, right? I think just getting English-speaking Caribbean to see our work is a hurdle in and of itself to overcome. I don't have answers. I guess my chime in is that I'm figuring it out on this process with the brightest possible eyes, a lot of naiveness and hope. But I think in one way I would challenge one. It's not exactly what you said, but more of like an inference. I think the stories that are coming out from our region are deserving to be seen by everyone. I think there's universality built into it because we are peoples from across the planet. And I think, for me, I think it's really the infrastructure and the mechanism to get our work to be seen. There is that North American, European machine that has its own framing. I think there may be ways that we need to figure out how to market ourselves to ourselves, because because the ways that we have learned to sell stories, because that's what happens when you see a trailer or you see an ad for any production. It's like someone selling you a premise. And there are instances where they're selling you the premise, and when you actually see the work, they're chalk and cheese. They're not even stacking up. You were told a lie sometimes. But I think it's part of figuring out how to sell what we make to ourselves. And that's first important to me. Again, like I'm certain it'd be great to be a world famous filmmaker, right? But I think for me, a lot of things start at home. And if my mom and my dad and my neighbors ain't proud of the work that I make, that's important to me. And I think it starts from there, because they just as much, if they appreciate my work on that level, they just as much have appreciated the things that they've seen out of Pixar and out of Studio Ghibli, etc., etc.
Yeah,
I'll pause there because I could ramble. Cheers.
No, I would agree with you, Arnaldo. We have to support our own first. We have to.
And with that said, those stories are unique. Can be uniquely, for instance, Japanese, uniquely American, uniquely British.
Mhm.
And we go to them and we love them, you know?
Mhm.
So
Of course.
I know it's here.
We have an appetite. We have an appetite.
May I chime in?
Please, Michael.
So I think Arnaldo touched on it, but I think, again, you can find universal stories in very specific stories. I think one of the issues I've seen in a lot of our films, if we're talking about trying to at least reach a larger audience, is a lot of times I feel like they're either overly cultural, overly academic, or there's another word I want to use, but it's like I feel like we can make films that show our culture without making a film about our culture. You know, just if you're telling a story that's based in any of our islands, then you're going to add all those little things into the story. And that in itself is revolutionary because now we're actually seeing our real lives being depicted on screen. I also think that it comes down to story. A good story can touch anyone from any background. And I do think that not being from the sort of Hollywood machine or UK, we do have a higher bar to clear. But I think it is clearable because, for instance, there's Korean film, Japanese film, Iranian film. And while we don't watch a lot of any of those films, the ones that are really good, we'll go and we'll watch. Because even though it's a different culture to ours, we still know it's tapping into some universal truth. So I think we can still do that with our stories. But again, just as usual, we have to work maybe even twice as hard than a filmmaker in America or the UK to get it seen by outside. And then I also want to say there are a lot of people doing interesting stuff in this space right now. Studio Anansi, Film Co, Caribbean One TV, these are all Caribbean platforms for Caribbean TV and film. So it's great that the infrastructure is starting to be built here. And then also my last thing to Akley's point, I'm actually putting together a list of resources right now on my website, which is michaelleesmedia.com, because I have felt the same way. It's very hard to find a mentor in such a new industry in the Caribbean. And what I feel like you basically have to do is you have to do a lot of reading and a lot of online researching and follow other people in the industry that are doing stuff, specifically people in the industry in the Caribbean, because you know that they'll face similar challenges and economic challenges and gear access challenges. So yeah, I'm basically putting together a list, having gone through tons of books, boiled down to really good books that I think serve people well. And just one, I'll give an example, was Robert Rodriguez's Rebel Without a Crew. And that was basically a story about how he shot his first feature film with about $10,000 and a lot of favors. And that was one of the books that just made me be like, okay, I can make my first film. And basically, if you want to be a filmmaker, you have to make a film. It doesn't matter how crummy it is, you just have to go and do it and then build off of that. So
get it in the can. Get it in the can.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. Okay. So inspiration for all of us, I suppose. Just do it. Get it in the can, right? Guys, sorry, what was that?
I had some direct questions that I wanted to ask Claudia and Monique and Monte. If I think that's your name on this. I hope I hope I'm not butchering it.
Moife, it's my African name.
Beautiful.
I see it's come up here. Yes.
Yeah. So can I go ahead or?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Fantastic.
We'll have to keep it tight because we're
yes,
trying
I'm
to
try to keep it very tight. So everyone's films are beautiful. Claudia spellbinding. I would describe that film. Me and my partner were watching it and were just floored. I was poorly translating the pieces I could understand because they were subtitles. But getting straight to my question, tell me about your choices to go from motion to still. I'm sure it might be clearer to me if I could understand more of the dialogue. But yeah, if you could just tell me a bit about this visual style you developed for this piece.
Thanks for your question. Well, it was, I think it was all a happy accident because I was just planning to use video because that was the assignment, was to use a specific camera that is from the school. But I took my camera, it's actually here. I took my camera with me because it was like going for a trip for some days, and I thought it would be nice to have something else and to yeah, a nice place to get some photos. The thing is that when I was back to the school, I developed the film and it was just beautiful. And it was the same process because I don't work with a script, right? So I was basically, I planned things to shoot during each day of shooting, but I didn't have like the what is in the film, like the narrative part, like let's say what he's explaining, that was something that came out of an interview that I did to Jose Manuel on the very last day. So that wasn't even planned to be the film. So basically I had loads of different pieces and nothing was working. It was actually like a complete disaster, my shooting. I had loads of short sort of like scenes that couldn't really like, that weren't working together. But then I also had an interview, which was amazing, but it was just an interview. And then I also had the photographs. So when I developed the photographs, I made this small like series of photos, and that gave me like a structure to edit the rest. So basically the video part is more, instead of, it's more like leftovers. I don't know. What was meant to be the film ended up being, yeah, it was a collage, a big collage of everything I had. I think it looks like I had everything planned, but it's nothing like that.
No, you know, my background is in photography. I just absolutely adore that. Yeah, powerful. Yeah, your approach, the storytelling. I even love the way that it developed from the photographs into the motion.
And although you should write a love letter to Claudia.
Yeah.
Right? Send her a love letter after, and 5 stars.
Are we out of time?
You know that's what she deserves, 5 stars. Yeah, it's 8:33.
Okay.
It's been about an hour and 9 minutes or so of this discussion. I'd like to thank all the participants. I'd like to thank the Hairouna Film Festival for inviting me to host this discussion, this panel on environmental films, all shot in the Caribbean. Guys, I really appreciate this time that we've got to spend with each other. I didn't get to talk to everybody as much as I would like. I feel as though I wanted to vibe a little bit more with all of you, kind of one-on-one, but trying to feel my way around and talk to everybody, include everybody. But I think we did okay in the end. Monique, thanks for joining us. I actually had a question for you, Monique, to bring you back into the conversation in the end. And you can blame Arnaldo for taking the time.
I had a question for Monique as well.
It's fine. I just pulling your leg. But thanks for joining us. I mean, certainly, Monica, you know, organizations like Seismic who, you know, can appreciate how the creative sector can engage with communities in a meaningful way. We need more organizations like that to start thinking in those ways. So it's good to have champions like yourself. So
Well,
I think I'll close. Go ahead, Monique.
So thank you, Carver.
yeah, I just wanted to say thanks for the opportunity again, you know, just bringing it back into that environmental focus. This field offers a really unique opportunity, I think, for that multidisciplinary collaboration that could really foster the development of the film, you know, fraternity or whatever. And I think that science and especially needs to be supporting the arts more where possible, and we need to really try and create those linkages as much as possible so that we can develop more, tell more of these stories, very unique stories that we have in the Caribbean. I mean, the adaptation alone in terms of climate change is just, we could go on, and we need to tell those stories. So I look forward to seeing you all again.
Yeah, man. And guys, as a parting comment, I would say that I'll be reaching out to several of you. Claudia, your film actually showed in our festival last year or the year before. I think it was last year. And Michael, obviously, we showed on Civilized. But I think Akley and Miss Roudette and Arnaldo, we definitely need to have a chat about what we can do with getting these films into our festival in some way in 2021.
Thank you so much. It's been a great being here, and there's been some really interesting points raised. I think there's a lot of aspects to what's been discussed that could be really explored a lot further and more in depth. But thanks for the opportunity.
Definitely, we will do it again, maybe in another festival, in another time, in another format. Thank you all so very much. Take care and have a good night, everybody out there in internet land. Take care, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.